tinjilanza kulondolela ndiwe nkunda vakati pakwangwala etsana uvulaza iunajiza mabala atakuza zofoka zanga koma usawa mvele pori pipi kongo ilibe maso iwe ndivula ya chimwemwe ndisambitseine baby ndine wansanje ndisabiseine chilunga mogu wawa usandinamize mamuna wako ndine baby bwela divine baby bwela divine ife bwela divine baby bwela divine ife bwela divine baby come and dance with me come and dance with me baby come and dance with me yeah. Come and dance with me baby bwela divine ife bwela divine baby bwela divine ife bwela divine baby come and dance with me come and dance with me baby come and dance with me yeah. Come and dance with me bwela divine bwela divine come and dance with me come and dance with me
Lutic Sounds.
The right music all the time. On Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It's 6 o'clock Central African time, and that means it's time to rise and shine. Wake up with us, Africa, as we are together for the next 3 hours, bringing you news from the African perspective. My name is Asanda, Beda. We are Channel Africa, broadcasting from South Africa in Johannesburg. That's where our studios are. You can catch us on the SABC Plus app, on YouTube, live streaming at Channel Africa 1 is our handle there, and www.channelafrica.co.za. It's the 12th of September, and it's a Friday. Someone's favorite day.
Oh yeah, I'm just jumping in joy. Very happy indeed. And the weather has really taken a positive turn. I think summer is on its way. It's a Friday, the weekend is here, so a young Peter Ndoro is very happy indeed. Yeah, thanks so much indeed for joining us. And yeah, it's the 12th of September, halfway through September already. But what are we looking at in terms of stories today? Well, Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States. That's something we need to unpack. What is going on? And the Delegates and Culture Summit Africa 2025 hear how African organizations are rethinking the role of culture in driving performance. We'll have more on these stories and others after the news and sports headlines with Matapelo Mahape and Musibudi Makura.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning. Starting off with this story, Professor of the International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs in South Africa, Anthony van Nieuwkerk, has dismissed the notion that DECO was unaware of the recent visit by representatives of the M23 rebels in the country. The South African government faces sharp criticism that the rebel group attended a peace and security dialogue in Mahalisburg, Gauteng, without proper vetting. The Thabo Mbeki Foundation hosted the event, which aimed to address conflicts across Africa. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola insisted the government was unaware of the M23's attendance. Van Nieuwkerk says it is all misinformation.
They are journalists and some parts of the media who portray the dialogue as an outrage, as if Dirko didn't know, as if the foreign minister who came to speak to us at the dialogue didn't know what was going on. This is all a form of misinformation because there's tension in the Congo between government and opposition. The opposition arrived for the dialogue. Government didn't want to participate in the dialogue. This is the Tshisekedi sort of oriented group. And they used media and journalists to spread this kind of news, which you are repeating now by saying it's outrage and that Dirko didn't know. It's simply not true.
And there's uncertainty on whether Ghana's latest decision to receive deportees from the U.S. has been ratified in Parliament. Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States, with 14 having already arrived in the country. They include Nigerians and one Gambian whom have already returned to their home countries. President John Dramani Mahama made the announcement at a press briefing yesterday. Our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Beda, explains.
Outside of whether or not there are financial benefits, there is a question of whether or not this agreement was ratified by Parliament. And I mentioned the 2016 Guantanamo Bay agreement which we had with the U.S. Some took that matter to the country's Supreme Court, and the court ruled that the agreement without parliamentary approval was not binding on us, and so it had to go to Parliament for ratification. That will come up again because the questions will be asked as to whether or not this agreement has to go to Parliament for ratification, and that's what we're expecting.
And Malawi's 2025 general elections campaign period ends this Saturday. All of the 16 presidential hopefuls have since lined up final rallies in major cities to woo 7.2 million registered voters. Frontrunners are former President Peter Mutharika of the Democratic Progressive Party, former Reserve Bank Governor Dalitso Kabambe, and incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera of the Malawi Congress Party. The campaign is dominated by promises of food security, economic recovery, job creation, and formation of a federal kind of government. George Mhango reports.
Talk of the public is that rising prices of sugar, bread, and cooking oil, including fertilizer, should be tamed by the next president. Former President Mutharika is the view that he is going to lower inflation to a single digit, while incumbent President Chakwera says programs of food security will be his key policy. Travels to various towns and cities show symbols of various political party campaign materials.
And Zambia's government says it will seek more compensation for communities affected by a toxic spill from a Chinese-owned copper mine if this is needed following a full assessment. The spill of highly acidic mine waste laden with toxic heavy metals happened in February when a dam that held waste from Sinometal's Leach Zambia copper mine collapsed. The firm apologized and pledged to compensate the victims. Some embassies have warned their citizens to avoid the area due to the health risks. And Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been sentenced to more than 27 years in prison after the Supreme Court found him guilty of attempting to coup following his defeat in the 2022 election. His lawyer called the sentence absurdly excessive and will appeal. The BBC's Lone Wells has the details.
The sentence for 70-year-old Jair Bolsonaro is effectively a life one. He will likely try to appeal it or ask for it to be turned into a house arrest due to his age and ill health. The sentence reflects the serious charges he was found guilty of, including attempting a coup. The allegations included that he knew about a plot to assassinate his election rival, now President of Brazil, Lula da Silva. His ally Donald Trump has said he is very unhappy, and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the US would react accordingly to this witch hunt.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, today marks 100 days to the start of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco, while Spain and Poland to host the 2027 Champions League finals. I'll give you details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Every day after the 6 o'clock news, we try and start your day with a concise roundup of the big news and events that took place across the continent and beyond in the last 24 hours in a concise manner. And that's to catch you up and also set you up for the news day ahead. And we listen to our reporters, analysts, and experts that kind of put all those stories into context for you. So let's begin what we call the Africa Roundup with this story from West Africa. Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States. 14 have already arrived, including Nigerians and one Gambian. President John Dramani Mahama says government helped facilitate the return as part of the US's tougher immigration policies.
We were approached by the US to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the US. And we agreed with them that West African nationals, were acceptable because all our fellow West Africans don't need a visa to come to our country. So if they decided to travel from US to Accra, they don't need a visa anyway. So if you're bringing our colleague West Africans back, that's okay. And so I think that agreement has been activated, and a first batch of 14 nationals came. West Africa has the protocol of free movement, and so any West African is free to come to Ghana and be able to stay for 90 days.
The G20 Tourism Working Group met this week in the town of White River in South Africa. Delegates finalized discussions on the G20 Tourism Action Plan, which will be presented at today's ministerial meeting at the Kruger National Park. South Africa's Tourism Department Deputy Director General Anim Malan shares more.
We identified 4 priorities with key actions. I should emphasize that. Our minister was very clear. She wants actions, not only documents. So the first priority is around artificial intelligence, innovation, digitalization, but also how we can assist tourism SMEs and startups in bringing them to the biggest value chain of the tourism sector. Our second priority speaks to seamless travel and air connectivity, but not only air connectivity in per se, but also intermodal connectivity. Once you are on the plane or off the plane, what then? So it's enhancing resilience to ensure that we have inclusive and sustainable tourism across the world.
Sudanese singer Tasfaleh Al-Amin returned to the ruins of the war-torn city of Omdurman in late August and formed a music band from scratch. She hopes to restart her career that came to a halt due to the ongoing war in her country.
All the artist friends with whom we used to work went in different directions because of the war. I created a post on Facebook looking for musicians in Omdurman. Very quickly, and this could be the quickest band to be formed, it happened. We met today and started rehearsals for our upcoming concert, which, God willing, will be held here in Omdurman.
Within a few days, the 33-year-old was performing to an audience at a concert in a cafe.
It was necessary to show that I came back. I had to come and celebrate with the people. It was necessary to sing amid this destruction for those people who are losing hope. We should have a concert and bring people together to meet, see each other, and remember the good old days, to encourage each other that we can come back and start again from the beginning.
Kenya's reputation for running is often tied to the elite athletes and Olympic medals. But in Nairobi, that legacy is being reimagined, not on podiums, but in quiet early mornings where a growing number of residents are using movement to build community. Zachary Hulman has more.
A group of more than 250 residents gather in the city's traffic-free streets every Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday for a quiet early morning run to build a community. The club We Run Nairobi was started by lawyer and marathon runner Emily Chepkor.
I just wanted it to be so community forward that you're coming out because the neighborhood is out, and then we'll move together for a bit, right? So I wanted to make the distance super light. I wanted to make our starting time quite light. I know people still think it's early, but I wanted it to start a little later in the day, so you could comfortably get up, come out, and run or walk a 5K. And I wanted that to be energy, really accessible, very, very beginner friendly.
After the run, people often hang back to stretch, talk, or sit together. And in those moments, the club becomes more than a running group.
And that's how we come to the end of today's Africa Roundup. I hope that caught you up with the top stories and events that took place across the continent yesterday and last 24 hours, actually. All right, stay with us. We've got so much more still to come right here on Rise and Shine.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, US law enforcement says that they've recovered the rifle that they believe was used in the assassination of conservative political activist and organizer Charlie Kirk. The founder of Turning Point USA was a close confidant of US President Donald Trump, who announced that he would be posthumously awarded the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Kirk was shot in the neck at long range at an outreach event at the Utah Valley University in Orem, in Utah, and that's near Salt Lake City, whilst speaking in front of a group of more than 3,000 people. Law enforcement revealed that they had tracked the killer's movements on campus and in the aftermath of the assassination and were confident that he would be caught. Sherwin Bryce Peace picks up the story from New York.
Kirk's assassination has seen widespread condemnation across the political spectrum, as the main focus for now remains catching his killer who remains at large. But according to investigators, they appear to be tracking his movements. Bo Mason is the Utah Public Safety Commissioner.
That individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately, we will reach out for the public's help and the media's help in pushing those photos. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators have worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual.
The FBI says they've also recovered a weapon they believe was used in the attack. Robert Bowles is the agent in charge of the investigation.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. It is a high-powered bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. The FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis.
Kirk could be described as a polarizing political figure in the United States and an unapologetic supporter of President Trump, an advocate for the right to bear arms and for armed security at schools, a fierce critic of transgender rights, a vocal critic of immigration, while espousing strong anti-Muslim views. His work through Turning Point USA, that advocates for conservative politics on college and university campuses, is credited for galvanizing the youth vote in support of Trump and his subsequent electoral victory in 2024. The president earlier announced Kirk would posthumously receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States.
I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven.
Former Presidents Joe Biden, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton and George W. Bush all rejected this despicable violence as having no place in the country's democracy, while the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, also weighed in.
Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are. It violates the core principles of our country, our Judeo-Christian heritage, our civil society, our American way of life, and it must stop. We need every political figure, we need everyone who has a platform to say this loudly and clearly. We can settle disagreements and disputes in a civil manner, and political violence must be called out, and it has to stop.
A moment that has again laid bare America's divisive and broken political landscape, that has seen Democrats and Republicans targeted in political violence, including the failed assassination attempt on President Trump last year and the hammer attack on former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's husband in 2022. I'm Shervin Bryce-Pease in New York.
South Africa's Constitutional Court has delivered judgment on whether Section 26 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act is unconstitutional, and this is insofar as it unfairly discriminates on the basis of gender by failing to afford men the right to assume the surname of women after marriage. SABC News reporter Kani Mapanga elaborates.
We've seen that the Concourt has confirmed that declaration of invalidity, apologies, by the Free State High Court against Section 26, subsection 1A to C of the Births and Deaths Registration Act. What that means is that men can now assume the surnames of their wives. There is no rational, justifiable reason why a woman has to assume the surname of her spouse, her male spouse, but he too cannot assume that spouse's or the female spouse's surname in the alternative. So essentially that declaration of invalidity has been suspended for 24 months. That gives Parliament at least 2 years to remedy that defect, but the couples concerned, that is Jana Joran, Henry van der Merwe and Jess Donnelly Bornman and Mr. Bornman, have successfully vindicated their constitutional rights to equality and dignity by ensuring that they have the choice, and now many others, to take on their wife's surname should they do so. The analysis that the Constitutional Court employed was the impact that this kind of legislation has on women, and they found that it was an insidious impact because it is rooted in patriarchy and enforcing those colonial gender norms. It has no legitimate government purpose but to place women in an inferior position in marriages once they assume their male spouse's surname. They found that this legislation has a severe impact on women in marriages and does not serve a legitimate government purpose. So, of course, they have successfully confirmed that declaration of invalidity. That means now all in society have a choice, if they choose to do so, to take on the surname of their female spouse. And of course, now women are not placed in a position where they have to lose their identity in marriage. They now can be placed in a position where, should they choose to make their surname the family name, that is now possible because legislation will now support it.
That was SABC News reporter Kenny Mapanga.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed. Tamo Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Accidents and medical claims have doubled in the past decade in South Africa's construction sector, leaving sadly many disabled. Recent data shows that about 8 accidents are reported monthly. Industry insurer, the Federated Employers Mutual Assurance Company, alongside the Department of Labour, held a summit with construction leaders to tackle safety challenges. Dimakazo Lishuro picks up the story for us.
South Africa's construction sector is among the country's most dangerous, with approximately 2 fatalities every week, roughly 8 per month, according to the Department of Employment and Labour. Falls from height accounted for 35% of fatalities between 2015 and 2024, while strike-by accidents caused 33% of reported incidents. Nazir Hussain, Chief Executive at the Federated Employers Mutual Assurance Company, says the high cost of claims and poor compliance are major concerns.
Construction, unfortunately, is one of those industries that's got a high prevalence. Unfortunately, you'll find organizations cut corners, employees cut corners, trying to get something done quickly, wanting to take their break, fatigue, tiredness, it all comes into play. And the more aware we are and the more awareness we create about the need to be highly vigilant and take precautions for health and safety is important. So the inspectorate currently that goes and inspects compliance is only sitting at about 650 people. And we need 20,000 of them out there to ensure that compliance is adhered to. And the only way compliance will really get adhered to is if you have people going out and ensuring that it happens.
Medical costs have more than doubled over the past decade, outpacing inflation, and thousands of workers are left disabled or unable to return to work. Industry leaders warn that fatigue from long hours, poor safety culture, and weak management commitments continue to drive up accidents. Sanjay Munu, Chief Business Development Officer at the Federated Employers Mutual Assurance, says prevention and training are key to reducing both costs and injuries.
We look at the claims cost, so looking at it in 2014, we paid 243 million rands worth of claims, and from 2014 up until 2024, there's been a 100% increase, right? So it's outstripping inflationary increases in terms of medical costs, and we've been introducing a number of initiatives aimed at reducing the accidents, improving health and safety compliance.
Government is also acting. The Department of Employment and Labour is revising construction regulations to ensure employers comply with safety standards. Draft regulations now shift safety checks to the design stage, aiming to prevent accidents before work even begins. This comes after highly publicized incidents, including the deadly George building collapse in the Western Cape province. The Deputy Minister at the Department of Employment and Labour, Judith Nemadzinga Shabalala, says these changes aim to stop accidents before they happen.
Which means no worker should ever be subjected to unsafe, degrading or life-threatening conditions. Health and safety, therefore, is not simply a matter of ticking boxes for compliance. It is about upholding our Constitution, defending the dignity of workers, and safeguarding the future of our nation by ensuring that every worker returns home alive and well to their families.
Meanwhile, the sector is embracing new tools to raise awareness and train workers. Digital platforms, including a WhatsApp-based e-learning tool, will deliver animated safety guidance directly to construction workers across sites. Industry leaders say the combined focus on stricter compliance, training and technology are essential to prevent fatalities, reduce costs, and protect the backbone of South Africa's economy. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
South Africa is putting young innovators in the spotlight as part of its G20 tourism program. On Thursday in the Mpumalanga province, the country hosted the first ever G20 Tourism Hackathon Awards. The event brought together students from across the country to pitch technology-driven solutions aimed at shaping the future of global tourism. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange has more.
175,000. The G20 Tourism Hackathon Awards on 11 September marked a milestone for South Africa as host of the G20 Tourism Agenda in 2025. The competition challenged students from 21 higher education institutions to design prototypes and ideas that can address pressing issues in tourism such as sustainability, digital innovation, and skills development. Tourism Minister Patricia de Lille told the ceremony that the winning projects will be recognized globally and backed with financial support to inspire more young people.
The winners of the competition will present their ideas to all the G20 tourism ministers plus our 8 guest countries. And I also want to thank our partners. But we want to make this an annual event, not just the once-off. This is the beginning. We are using the first 50 students to pioneer to see where we can improve, but we also want them to inspire them. And therefore, we have allocated 500,000 Rand for prize money.
De Lille says the awards are not a once-off. With just over $28,000 in prize money, their aim is to turn the hackathon into an annual event that keeps inspiring and empowering students. She explained that the projects are not just symbolic, but will be incubated and linked to industry partners to become commercially viable.
We want to see these prototypes, incubate them, make them commercially viable. Already I spoke to Google today. Google is coming on as a partner for next year. And we want it to be an annual event whereby we involve, we started with 18 institutions, we ended up with 21.
6:30 Central African time it is. Let's say good morning to Matapelo now for the news headlines.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. Professor Anthony van Nieuwkerk denies the DIRCO's ignorance of M23 rebels' visit to South Africa, claiming it was a misinformation despite the government's lack of a proper vetting. And there is uncertainty on whether Ghana's latest decision to receive deportees from the US has been ratified in Parliament. Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States, with 14 having already arrived in the country. And US President Donald Trump urges peaceful response to Charlie Kirk's murder, stating he wants non-violence as an advocate. Meanwhile, FBI investigations continues. More on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's a Friday, which means we are anticipating a massive sporting weekend. And to tell us a little bit about what's been happening and maybe what we can look forward to at the sports desk, we say good morning, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports days. Well, today's a big day, marking 100 days to go to the start of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations tournament out in Morocco. So Morocco is hosting the event for a second time and the first since 1988. So due to now FIFA expanding the FIFA Club World Cup competitions to 32 teams and also having it scheduled in June and July of this year, this year's edition of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament will be played between the 21st of December 2025 until the 18th of January 2026. It will be the first time that the tournament will be played over the Christmas as well as the New Year period. The situation has also been further complicated by the addition of 2 extra match days scheduled for the last 2 weeks of January in the expanded Champions League that begins the season in Europe. On to this story now. Madrid will host the 2027 Men's Champions League final with Warsaw to stage the women's final. Atletico Madrid's 70,000 capacity Estadio Metropolitano has been awarded the men's showpiece after Milan's San Siro was stripped of that honour. UEFA decided to reopen bidding for the event amid concerns about refurbishment plans at the San Siro and the match that will take place in the Spanish capital. Now, Madrid's Estadio Metropolitano last hosted the Champions League final in 2019 when Liverpool beat Tottenham Hotspur. Now, the women's final will be staged in Poland's capital at Warsaw's Stadium Narodowy. UEFA also announcing that the Super Cup match in 2026 will take place in Salzburg in Austria. On to athletics news. Olympic champions Noah Lyles as well as Julian Alfred will take to the track in Tokyo on Saturday for heats of the 100-meter event. Now, Lyles will come under enormous pressure from the top American duo seeking to break U.S. dominance in the blue reband event, the likes of Keishan Thompson as well as Oblique Seville. Now, although Lyles had a delayed start to the season, both have tasted a success on the Diamond League circuit. Lyles ran Botswana's Olympic champion in the 200-meter event, Litsile Tebogo, in that event in the Diamond League finals in Zurich in Switzerland just last month. It was also a result that the American had also left him with a lot of energy heading into Tokyo. Alfred, meanwhile, notched up a morale-boosting win over the 100-meter, or rather win in the 100-meter event also in Switzerland, and was no doubt about expectations in Japan. Alfred will look to back another global title for St. Lucia, her Olympic gold being the first one for the tiny Caribbean nation. That Olympic gold was won last year in Paris. On to some cricket news now. South Africa defeated England by 14 runs just a day ago on the Duck-Lewis-Stern method in a rain-affected first T20 international in Cardiff. Bad weather reduced what should have been a 40-over contest at the Sophia Gardens to just 12.5 overs in total. England, chasing a revised 69 in 5 overs for a victory, finished on 54 for the loss of 5 wickets. Let's hear now from Donovan Ferreira, who was named the player of the match for his performance with the bat.
I mean, obviously it was wet, but I didn't really focus too much on that. I think it's out of our control. We have to just crack on. So, it's between the captain and the umpires, and they were just relaying clear messages to us. Aiden was good with that, just keeping us in the loop the whole time. So it just allowed us to focus on the game, and once a final decision was made, then we can actually prep. So it was a 9-over game, so that was set for us. And then it's just about how can you maximize those 9 overs and then, take it as it comes, play ball by ball.
Ferreira was, of course, named the player of the match, having hit 6 sixes in his 25 not out, and Devon Brevis also made 23 runs. He says that they had to be cautious after the reduction of the overs.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously as a team, you got to do whatever the captain decides, and sometimes the toss doesn't really go your way. We just had to focus on our skills and what we needed to do. So, first was the batting innings, so try get to a respectable score. We didn't know how the wicket was going to play. And it's just about us backing ourselves, and anything can happen in a reduced game. So it's about giving yourself a bit of time and not just play reckless cricket. Fortunately for us, we put a good score on the board, and our bowlers bowled well. So it's obviously that's why we came on top.
Right, so that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
Let's say good morning to Chandu Goligege as we wake up to the latest in the world of business now.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Some emerging farmers in South Africa's citrus industry say the most biggest challenges they face lie in navigating compliance requirements and pressure of production costs. Farmers believe this is a greater challenge than access to land and finance or skills transfer. Industry players gathered in Johannesburg yesterday for the annual Citrus Growers Development Chamber in Ndaba. Citrus grower Nokwanele Mzamo.
But what we need also now is the experience of doing things the way they are doing, because they are successful because of doing things the way they are doing it. So some of us are failing because we think that things are happening. It's easy to operate in this sector, and the sector is very, very, very difficult.
South Africa's power utility Eskom is embarking on a program aimed at disconnecting households that were illegally connected to the grid in the Northwest Province. They have already disconnected houses in some of the villages. However, residents say the houses in some of the area that have been disconnected were connected by a company contracted to Eskom and that no irregularities were flagged then. Community representative Nzimeni Skota elaborates.
Eskom should be held accountable for attempted murder. Why do I say that? There are diabetic people, there are people who are on machines of dialysis. Now, if you come and just cut, whether they are wrong or right, and what helps us as locals is that you'll see them. They are from Eskom. Now, whose responsibility? If there's
Namibia is set to increase its sulfuric acid production in response to rising critical mineral output, with Green Metals Refining and Vedanta announcing plans to set up and revive plants respectively. Sulfuric acid is widely used in the extraction processes for metals including uranium, copper, manganese and rare earths used in clean energy technologies. Namibia is emerging as a leader in the green energy sector with 8 active critical minerals projects set to position it at the forefront of global green energy initiatives. In other news, the Nigerian tax bill that seeks to streamline compliance, broaden the tax base and boost revenue is said to have generated widespread anger. Analysts say since the bill's announcement and removal of subsidies, there had been no measures in place to cushion Nigerians from headwinds. The bill that was signed in June will now take effect until January 2026. Organized labor has given the government an ultimatum to cancel it or face industrial action. Public affairs analyst and media consultant Dr. Adeniyi Ifetayo.
2 years ago, as soon as this current administration came into power, he announced that subsidy is gone and subsidy was gone, and we are still facing the impact, the effect, because there are no measures put in place to cushion the effect of the pains of subsidy removal. So coming out to say in January 2026, you want to remove, you want to add 5% fuel tax consumption, whatever it is untimely.
Also in the news, Switzerland is proposing that its gold industry builds a refinery in the US or increases its processing capacity there. The proposal is part of a plan to reduce US trade tariffs. On the 7th of August, President Donald Trump slapped 39% tariffs on Swiss goods imports due to the US trade deficit with Switzerland, which scrapped its own industrial tariffs at the start of last year. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 506, in Botswana 13 pula 26, Kenya 128 shilling 39, Zambia 24 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40, Russia 84 rubles 33, India 84 rupees 68, China 71.12, South Africa 17 rand 45 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,650, platinum at $1,385 per ounce, the price of Brent crude oil at $65.84 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligegi.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
Our G20 fact for this 12th of September is that the G20 influences everything from the price of fuel and groceries to how nations deal with pandemics. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the G20 launched the Debt Service Suspension Initiative in order to help poorer countries survive the economic impact of the outbreak. The bloc also pushes for fairer tax systems and stronger financial regulations. And that's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Minister of Agriculture in South Africa, John Steenhuisen, says the country has positioned hunger and affordability at the center of its agenda at the G20 Leaders Summit in approaches. Steenhuisen says the goal is to deliver practical packages that will help South Africa grow by trading more. He says the Johannesburg meeting in November will be about pathways that farmers and funders can practically be able to implement almost immediately. Steenhuisen was speaking at the FNB Roundtable, that's the First National Bank Roundtable discussion on the expectations of the agricultural sector from the oncoming G20 meeting. Thandi Swamau reports.
Steenhuisen says the goal is to help South Africa grow by trading more, wasting less and adapting faster. He says the agricultural goals at the G20 are also about helping South Africa and the world feed itself more affordably and sustainably.
We're less interested in aid, but we're very interested in trade. And leveling the playing fields is not just about charity. It's about ensuring that our farmers compete on fair terms, that markets remain open.
He says South Africa's agricultural sector remains resilient and growing despite lack of subsidies. This is while competing in exports with countries that are heavily subsidized by their governments.
Give our producers a fair shot. Fair rules, reliable infrastructure, workable, patient finance, and clear market signals. And I can guarantee you they will do the rest.
FNB's agricultural economist Paul Makube has encouraged South Africa's agricultural exporters to reposition their products into non-traditional markets as a commercial imperative, saying the country's presidency of the G20 is a crucial opportunity to address challenges faced by the agricultural exporters in a changing global geopolitical landscape where global trade is fragmenting and protectionism is rising.
What is important is for us to establish relationships. It's not about transactions, it's about a long-term relationship, because it is not easy to switch from one area to another in terms of markets. It is important that we also deepen Africa, trade. As envisaged in the Africa Free Continental Agreement, we need a diversified, modernized, more resilient, globally connected world.
Steenhuisen says South Africa has the potential of being the breadbasket of the continent given the right circumstances. I'm Thandi Somawi in Cape Town.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Qatar's Prime Minister has referred to Israel's government as bloodthirsty extremists, whilst calling out Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of using shameful justifications for the attack targeting Hamas leadership in Qatari soil earlier this week. The council convened in an emergency session to discuss the strike that killed 6 people in Doha. Israel's ambassador offered a vigorous defense of his country's actions, despite largely being isolated in the meeting, whilst the warning that there could be no immunity for terrorists. The council earlier issued a statement condemning the recent strikes in Doha without mentioning Israel by name, but demonstrated a rare consensus among all 15 members that included the acquiescence of the United States in criticizing Israel's actions that violated Qatar's sovereignty. Sherwin Bryce-Beast reports from New York.
Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said Israel's attack on Doha placed a test before the international community, particularly a Security Council mandated to maintain international peace and security.
Israel, led by extremists, bloodthirsty extremists, have gone beyond any borders, any limitations when it comes to behavior, not only among states, but among individuals. We're unable to predict what Israel can do. How can we host Israeli representatives when they have commit this attack? Have you heard of any state that is attacking a mediator this way? A state that is attacking negotiating teams that are hosted by Qatar? And then the Prime Minister is using shameful justifications and is trying to justify this attack that is condemned by the whole world.
He echoed sentiments from other council members that Israel was seeking to undermine efforts towards a ceasefire in Gaza, days after the United States had put forward a new ceasefire proposal to Hamas.
This behavior that undermine all values prove only one thing, that the current leaders of Israel are arrogant and they believe that they enjoy impunity. In addition to the genocide in Gaza and the unprecedented humanitarian disaster in the Strip, and the international community has not acted yet, here we are. We can see that Israel is undermining the stability of the region impetuously.
Israel's ambassador Danny Danon told the council that it was only targeting Hamas in its strike on Doha, while arguing that there could be no immunity for terrorists, days after Hamas claimed responsibility for an attack that killed 6 people at a bus stop in Jerusalem.
Hamas immediately praised the killers as heroic and exceptional, later claiming full responsibility for the attack and calling the massacre of innocent people a natural response. There is nothing natural about this. It is terror, pure and simple. Today, 48 innocent people are still held hostage by Hamas. Their families live in daily pain. It has been more than 700 days that innocent people have been trapped in Hamas captivity. 700 days of cruelty and abuse. Hamas has used them as bargaining chips, turning their suffering into currency. But let me be clear, there is no immunity for terrorists, not for those who commit it, and not for those who enable it.
Then directed his attention to the Qatari PM.
The time for Qatar to choose has come. For too long, Qatar has harbored terrorists, offering Hamas leaders sanctuary in luxury hotels while they orchestrate massacres and terror attacks. History will not be kind to accomplices. Either Qatar condemns Hamas, expels Hamas, and brings Hamas to justice, or Israel will.
Here now a snapshot of interventions from other council members. Acting US Ambassador Dorothy Shear.
Unilateral bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation working very hard and bravely taking risks alongside the United States to broker peace, does not advance Israel's or America's goals. That said, it is inappropriate for any member to use this to question Israel's commitment to bringing their hostages home. Eliminating Hamas, which has profited off of the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal.
Pakistan's Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmed.
At a time when delicate negotiations on Gaza peace deal were progressing towards a possible breakthrough, striking the territory of a principal mediator and those directly involved in negotiations is a deliberate attempt to sabotage diplomacy, derail peace efforts, and prolong the suffering of civilians. It is evident that Israel, the occupying power, is bent on doing everything to undermine and blow up every possibility of peace.
Sierra Leone's Ambassador Michael Imran Kanu.
We must be clear. International law does not recognize revenge. International law recognizes only lawful self-defense on the use of force against imminent unlawful attack or collective action authorized by the Security Council. Acts motivated by revenge, retaliation are illegal.
In condemning the Israeli actions in a collective statement, the council members recalled their support for the vital role Qatar continues to play in mediating an end to the war in Gaza, while underlying their support for Qatar's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
Judgment has been reserved until Friday in the urgent application by convicted serial killer and rapist in South Africa, Thabo Bester, and his girlfriend, Dr. Nandi Phamagudumana. The couple has asked the High Court in the South African city of Pretoria to stop Netflix, a streaming service, television-wise, from airing a documentary called Beauty and the Bester, which is scheduled to be aired Friday morning. Pearl Makubane filed this report.
Thabo Bester's legal representative, Advocate Muafrika Wamaila, says Bester will suffer prejudice as flighting the Netflix documentary will infringe on his right to a fair trial. Wamaila says from the trailer, Makudumana's father is featured. He argues that human dignity and his right to be presumed innocent until guilty will be infringed.
In this documentary, we have the accused, one of the co-accused, who is speaking, the father of Nandi Phamagudumana, I'm repeating that. And she says, I could not imagine my daughter doing such a thing. It's left there so that people... And now we also have a judge, Justice Cameron, speaking in that documentary, saying, as a judge, I have never seen such a thing. Definitely we are talking about Thabo Bester's alleged escape. When such documentary are flighted or broadcasted, we then are standing in one corner of the truth.
Meanwhile, Makudumana's lawyer, Advocate Lerato Muela, told the court that she had an agreement with production company Storyscope for the commercial use of her archives. However, Advocate Muela says that agreement is not binding.
Netflix then responded only on the 31st of August 2025 to the letter of demand. And obviously they reiterate that she can't come to court because of the contractual clause. And particularly at paragraph 6 of that letter, which is found at page 001, Netflix response says that Dr. Magudumane has also concluded an archive licensing agreement with our client. in terms of which she agreed commercial terms with our client for the use of her personal archives in the production of the documentary, and that she has waived the right to interdict. She has waived this right that we're trying to do.
Advocate Tembeka Nqungayitobi, representing Netflix, read out communication between Dr. Makudumana's legal representative and the filmmaker, which confirms the doctor was paid.
Hi, Neil. Neil is the filmmaker or the documentary maker. Compliments of the new year, and God bless the journey ahead. Please be advised that Nandipa is finally going to speak and address a few things she and her legal team are comfortable for sharing on the recorder. This is a welcome development. However, she is not prepared to do it before the payment of the last payment is done, which is ultimately only meant to be paid later on for archives, which this recording would be classified under. So she can't now come around and say that I never had a chance to comment. She was given a chance to comment.
Meanwhile, Wamoila says it can't be assumed Besta escaped from prison.
There is this statement that he escaped. My lady, there are many ways to come out of prison, which it should be proved in trial court. There are many ways. We don't know if he got a parole. We don't know if there are many ways to be released out of prison. It's not always an escape.
Judgment is expected to be delivered a few minutes before the documentary airs. Paul Makubane, SABC News, Pretoria.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7 o'clock Central African time, which means this is the second hour of Rise and Shine, right here on Channel Africa Radio, where we bring you the African perspective. And we're broadcasting live from our studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, on the internet, www.channelafrica.co.za. And you can also catch us on your mobile apps. Just go to your app store, look for SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and then look for Channel Africa, and of course look for our program Rise and Shine. I'm Peter Ndoro.
And my name is Asanda Beda. In this new hour of the show, the second hour that is, we look at South Africa having been singled out as one of the bright spots in the latest Global State of Democracy report. This report done by International IDEA, and going to Malawi as they're gearing up for their national general elections on 16 September. And Human Rights Watch having raised an alarm there to that run-up of the Malawi, or to the Malawi elections. We'll find out why, and of course those stories and more will be coming up. Let's first get our news. It's 7 o'clock Central African time. Here is Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. South Sudan's Vice President Riek Machar has been charged with murder, treason and crimes against humanity in a move that some fear could reignite the country's civil war. Justice Minister Joseph King Akech says that the charges against Machar related to an attack in March by a militia allegedly linked to the Vice President. Forces loyal to Machar fought a 5-year civil war against those backing President Salva Kiir until a 2018 peace deal ending the fighting in the world's U.S. country. The 2018 peace deal ended the conflict that killed nearly 400,000 people. And a professor of the International and Diplomacy Studies at the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, Anthony van Nieuwkerk, has dismissed the notion that DECO was unaware of the recent visit by representatives of the M23 rebels in the country. The South African government faces a sharp criticism that the rebel group attended the peace and security dialogue in Magaliesburg, Gauteng, without proper vetting at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation hosted the event, which aimed to address the conflict across Africa. The presence of M23 just a month after 14 South African soldiers were killed in clashes with the group in Goma has sparked outrage. International Relations Minister Ronald Lamola insisted the government was unaware of M23's attendance, stating the department did not view the guest list. Van Nieuwkerk says it is all misinformation.
There are journalists and some parts of the media who portray the dialogue as an outrage, as if Dirko didn't know, as if the foreign minister who came to speak to us at the dialogue didn't know what was going on. This is all a form of misinformation because there's tension in the Congo between government and opposition. The opposition arrived for the dialogue. Government didn't want to participate in the dialogue. This is the Tshisekedi sort of oriented group. And they used media and journalists to spread this kind of news, which you are repeating now by saying there's outrage and that Dirko didn't know. It's simply not true.
And there's uncertainty on whether Ghana's latest decision to receive deportees from the U.S. has been ratified in Parliament. Ghana has agreed to accept West African nationals deported from the United States, with 14 having already arrived in the country. They include Nigerians and one Gambian who have already been returned to their home countries. President John Dramani Mahama made the announcement at a press briefing yesterday. Our correspondent in Ghana, Eric Mawena Ekbeta, explains.
Outside of whether or not there are financial benefits, there is a question of whether or not this agreement was ratified by Parliament. And I mentioned the 2016 Guantanamo Bay agreement which we had with the U.S. Someone took that matter to the country's Supreme Court, and the court ruled that the agreement without parliamentary approval was not binding on us, and so it had to go to Parliament for ratification. That will come up again because the questions will be asked as to whether or not this agreement has to go to Parliament for ratification, and that's what we're expecting.
Malawi's 2025 general election campaign period ended this Saturday. All of the 16 presidential hopefuls have since lined up final rallies in major cities to woo 7.2 million registered voters. Front-runners are former President Peter Mutharika of the First runner-up are former President Peter Mutharika of the Democratic Progressive Party, former Reserve Bank Governor Dalitso Kabambe, and incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera of the Malawi Congress Party. The campaign is dominated by promises of food security, economic recovery, job creation, and the formation of a federal kind of government. George Mhango reports.
Talk of the public that rising prices of sugar, bread, and cooking oil, including fertilizer, should be tamed by the next president. Former President Mutharika is the view that he is going to lower inflation to a single digit, while incumbent President Chakwera says programs of food security will be his key policy. Travels to various towns and cities show symbols of various political party campaign materials.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has called for a peace response to the murder of his ally, Charlie Kirk, a right-wing youth leader and activist shot dead in Utah on Wednesday. Trump said Charlie Kirk was an advocate of nonviolence, and that's how he, the president, would like people to react. The FBI investigation continues, as the BBC's David Willis explains.
They issued 4 more photographs of this man, this suspect who they believe could slip easily into the campus. They describe him as a young man of college age who would have blended very easily into the campus environment. Now, also today, detectives recovered a hunting rifle wrapped in a blanket in woodland quite close to the university, and they also came across other clues, including a footprint and a palm print.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2 711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapula Mahabe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the wait is over as the World Athletics Championships finally get underway in Tokyo, Japan this weekend, while today also marks 100 days to the start of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco. Details of these and other stories at 7:30.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
South Africa's African National Congress, or the ANC, will hold its long-awaited Special National Executive Committee, or NEC, meeting this weekend after several postponements. The party's highest decision-making body between conferences is set to discuss key issues, including the state of local government and the question of dual membership for ANC and South African Communist Party SACP members, following the SACP's decision to contest elections independently. Earlier, the African National Congress said it would be difficult to maintain its alliance with the SACP while both parties compete for the same votes in the 2026 local elections. Our political correspondent, Ndoro Mugobo, has more.
The two-day special ANC-NEC meeting starting on Saturday is seen as a make-or-break gathering for the ANC tripartite alliance. The meeting is called to finally decide the future of the decades-long relations between the ANC and the SACP, with the SACP steadfast on its stance to go it alone in the next polls, and the ANC having expressed its strong opposition to that. Its Secretary General Fikile Mbalula says the SACP decision has sparked a serious debate on the dual membership. Mbalula insists that if the SACP goes ahead with its decision, it would be difficult for them to share future election strategy with an organization that has defined itself as its opponent.
It's not the question of whether the ANC expel. The resolution itself is bringing into question membership duality of the ANC. It's not a question of threatening people or saying to people, because you've got dual membership, go. It's a decision that in its implication means that if you stand as a ward councillor in a ward, you stand opposite to the ANC. It brings into question duality. You are a party, you are contesting the same ward we are contesting. So who brought about the question of duality in the context of this decision? It is the party, because now we can no longer share the same things we used to do. Election strategy, planning together to fight for the consolidation of the NDR.
But the SACP General Secretary Solima Paila has dared the ANC to expel communists, insisting that those SACP members are ANC members as well.
They are ANC members in their own right. As much as members of the ANC, they decided to join the Communist Party and pursue a further struggle to deepen this transformation. Now, if the ANC takes its own decision to expel our members, that's their own baby. It has been done by Clement Gadali. After we built the trade union movement, he expelled communists. We rebuilt the trade union movement anew in this country. We can't tell them what to do, but we are committed to alliance, to dual membership, to respect of each component of the alliance and the roles that members are playing.
Seemingly with the SACP unyielding on its position, the ANC Secretary General says the special NEC meeting will have to decide on the course of action, insisting that the SACP's decision is the most disastrous ever in the history of the alliance.
We have reflected at the theoretical level what are the implications of this monumental, disastrous decision of the party for the alliance. And we have said as the ANC, we are against that. But it looks like there's no turning back. Now, the ANC have got to apply itself on the practicalities of how we are going to navigate that space. And the marching orders will come in terms of what is going to happen. We have made up our mind about that. And we'll share that perspective with our membership. In the next coming week, we'll share that perspective. Why we say that there is no theoretical basis for the Communist Party to stand on its own.
With the special NEC meeting also called to discuss the state of the local government, deliberations will culminate in a roll call meeting on Monday, where the over 6,000 ANC councillors and mayors will account to the NEC for their work since the 2021 local government elections. I am Tebo Mokobe in Johannesburg.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. South Africa has been named as one of the bright spots in the latest Global State of Democracy report by International IDEA. Whilst more than a third of African countries have experienced democratic setbacks in recent years, ranging from delayed elections in West Africa to declining press freedoms, South Africa and Botswana are singled out as examples where credible elections have strengthened democratic institutions. To unpack the findings and what they might mean for Africa's democratic future, we're now joined by David Tauris, who's International Ideas Africa Specialist. David, thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thanks very much for having me.
Your report finds that more than a third of African countries have declined in at least one key democratic measure over the past 5 years. What do you think is driving this backsliding?
Thank you. Yeah, so this comes against a sort of a global trend of decline, and it's and in Africa, of course, a very diverse region experiencing very different challenges. There are all sorts of potential sort of causes for this, but those countries that we are seeing the biggest sort of declines are those that have experienced political instability, coup d'état, and other forms of sort of unconstitutional sort of changes in government, and these have obviously significant impacts in terms of democratic performance in areas like the credibility of elections, if indeed elections are held, the effectiveness of parliaments when those are sort of suspended. We're also seeing in those contexts sort of attacks on the freedom of the press, which has fallen to a sort of 50-year low sort of globally. So yeah, it's these countries that we're seeing the most sort of extreme declines. But as you say, South Africa bucks this trend in terms of its improvements in the credibility of elections, and there's a sort of a welcome bright spot.
I think I should have started with this question, actually, so that we're all quite clear. When we say levels of democracy, what do we mean? Is it just the election process?
It's a very good question. Absolutely not. Elections are, of course, a really important part of a healthy democracy. But the way we measure it is that we have sort of over 17 different areas of democratic performance. So we're not just talking about sort of elections. We're talking about other forms of civic engagement, the extent to which we have a sort of healthy environment for civil society organizations to operate in, the basic sort of democratic freedoms, things like the sort of freedom of expression, freedom of association and assembly. We're talking about the independence of courts and the judiciary, the extent to which laws are predictably enforced, the level of state violence. So there are lots of different aspects that we look at when we're assessing the quality of democracy.
How difficult is it to measure? I mean, there's some keys, I guess, are obvious, but others perhaps not so easy to get, especially when access is difficult.
Absolutely. And one of the challenges we sort of find is, of course, getting sort of quality data across all 173 sort of countries that we get. So we're looking at two sort of various different types of data that we base our assessments on. One type of data is sort of expert assessments. So experts within each of the countries that we assess are asked very specific questions about a particular aspect of democratic performance. And then we're also looking at sort of observable data from sort of credible sources like the United Nations. But it's a very difficult sort of concept to assess and measure.
There are some, I don't know if you can call it grey areas, but I look at a country like Burkina Faso where it was a coup and it was an unconstitutional change in government. However, it does seem as though it was a popular one. What do you do in cases like that?
Yeah, so the sort of popularity of a particular sort of uh, a government action is not something that we assess in this particular tool. Which is our sort of global state of democracy indices. We think that popular sort of perception of democracy are incredibly important, and there's other sort of research that we do to complement these sort of expert assessments and other forms of data, because it speaks to the legitimacy of the sort of the government, which is incredibly important. It speaks to the very heart of what a democracy is. It's about sort of popular control over decision makers and decision making. So it's very relevant, but it's not something that we assess in this particular tool that we have. But we do see there are certain sort of measures that we look at which will reflect popular sort of responses. So I spoke earlier about the fact that what we're looking at is not just voting, but where we see sort of other forms of sort of popular engagement, protest, either in support or against government, civil society sort of action. So that tells us a little bit about the level of popular sort of engagement.
So South Africa and Botswana, what are they doing really well?
Yeah, so in both of those instances, we've seen that they both sort of experienced improvements in the credibility of the election. So if I sort of take South Africa, it's sometimes sort of difficult to sort of pinpoint with great confidence which particular development has prompted this improvement, but we are seeing, for example, an improvement in the score of kind of the plurality of the election. So, for example, the reforms allowing independent candidates to participate in the legislative elections are likely to have played a part in that. Other developments around the sort of improvement of voter accessibility. So there were some sort of developments around online registration for out-of-country voting, home visits sort of for voters. All of these sorts of measures make it easier for voters to cast their ballot, and that is likely to have helped improve its score. Confidence in the electoral sort of commission, and we saw the same. So these are the sorts of developments that we think may be behind the improvements in these scores.
I would imagine there's certain institutions that kind of help the democratic process. Independent electoral commissions that are truly independent, a legal system and judiciary that's independent, I guess. Tell us a little bit more about some of the institutions and things that help democracy.
Absolutely. Institutions are a really key part of a sort of healthy democracy. And oftentimes we focus on the sort of three branches of government, right? We're interested in the sort of parliament, the executive, and of course, the courts. But as South Africa demonstrates so sort of well, we have a cluster of other organizations in South Africa, the sort of Chapter 9 institutions, what we call sort of countervailing institutions. So these include electoral bodies, anti-corruption commissions, and the sort of public protector in South Africa. These are all organizations that, or all institutions, sorry, that sort of work to sort of ensure that that the key elements of democracy sort of function, that the sort of freedoms are preserved, that electoral processes work as they should do, that members of the sort of civil service, including the executive, are not corrupt. And it's also important that these institutions sort of work together, that they sort of support each other. That the courts, for example, protect the sort of constitutional sort of the sort of constitutional sort of independence of these sort of Chapter 9 institutions. So those are the formal institutions, but we also think of other institutions that are sort of less formal but play a really important role. So, you know, the press is a really good example of that. They play such an important role in ensuring the sort of that people have access to the information that they need to be able to make informed decisions as to who they're going to vote for example, or key sort of concerns about the functioning of the democracy, which might sort of drive them to sort of protest or other forms of political engagement. So institutions are really important.
David, sadly, that's all we have time for, but thanks very much indeed for a fascinating conversation about the state of democracy across our continent. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
That was David Tauris, who's Africa Specialist at International IDEA, speaking to us about their latest report, Global State of Democracy Report. And it's not a fantastic story for Africa, sadly.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800 428 428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
As Malawi gears up for its general elections on the 16th of September, which is next week Tuesday, Human Rights Watch has raised alarm in the run-up to Malawi's elections. It warns that the country is facing a growing crisis of confidence in its electoral institutions, including concerns over the fairness of the Malawi Electoral Commission, or the MEC, and its leadership. Critics argue the commission is becoming politically aligned with the ruling party, raising questions on election credibility. According to Malawi Electoral Commission, MEC, over 7 million Malawians have registered to vote, with women making up 57.1% of the electorate. For more diagnosis on this topical issue, we're joined by Idris Nasa, a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. Idris, thanks for joining us. How are you this morning?
Very good morning to you, and thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Your report raises serious questions about the impartiality of the Malawi's Electoral Commission, or the MEC, particularly around the political affiliations of its leadership and secretariat. Can you elaborate on that? What have you found?
Well, first of all, I think it is trite to note that crucial for addressing any electoral justice is an independent and impartial National Election Commission, and I mean that's very clear. And this was made clear, for example, in Malawi's case in 2019, when the Constitutional Court annulled the previous presidential election, and it was very scathing on the conduct of the Malawi Electoral Commission then. Right now, there are serious concerns about the independence, the composition, and the conduct of the Malawi Electoral Commission. We have seen past elections in the country being perceived as problematic, largely because the Electoral Commission and the people at the Secretariat of the Commission are perceived to be closely aligned with the interests of the ruling party. So in this instance, in this particular election, the management of the Electoral Commission Secretariat remains in the hands of people widely believed to be sympathizers of the Malawi Congress Party, which is the ruling party in the country. Some of these individuals have very close family ties with the ruling Malawi Congress Party, and it has raised concerns that they might then supervise or superintend over a flawed electoral process, or a process that could be skewed in favor of the ruling party.
As Human Rights Watch, you've also expressed concern that the MEC has refused to allow local organizations access in order to inspect voter rolls, and that Smartmatic-sourced electoral management devices have not been independently audited. What risks does this pose to electoral integrity, and how can they be mitigated?
I mean, it is a shame that just a few days before a very crucial general election, the country is still haggling over access to the voters' roll. There was a court ruling just yesterday. I've not yet read the ruling in its entirety, but what it has done, it has allowed the Malawi Electoral Commission to deny access to an independent audit of the voters' roll. But it makes people really question the accuracy of the data that is in the voters' roll, because it is crucial. I mean, a voters' roll is a crucial instrument, for any electoral process. You would think that the commission will be able to provide the voters' roll in an analyzable format, and for it to display the voters' roll for inspection way before the voting date, to give the voters an opportunity to inspect and correct the voters' roll for any anomalies. But this has not been complied with in this current instance. The Malawi Electoral Commission, for the longest time, there have been street demonstrations. Civil society groups have come out. Independent players have come out to say, could you please make available an electronic version for inspection and audit? The Malawi Electoral Commission has argued that releasing it would expose the document to manipulation and could compromise the security of the database. They argue that the voters' roll is a very sensitive document that could not be released to the public, as it might compromise the security and so forth. But I think what is more important is to instill confidence in the people that the electoral process is going to be managed in a manner that is fair, that is impartial, that is amenable to an independent audit of the verification, that the data can be verified. So without the verification, how do you instill confidence in everybody that the voters' roll is correct, that is the material that is going to be crucial in this electoral process?
What's also surfaced is allegations of biased media coverage by state-controlled outlets and an unequal access to public resources by opposition parties. How severe are these issues as far as you are assessed, and what measures need to be put in to ensure a more level playing field in the campaigning period?
Malawi has one, national broadcaster, and it's called the Malawi Broadcasting Corporation. And this media house is mandated by law to be, balanced, to be fair, to be impartial, so that it can help in upholding the integrity of this election. What we have seen, unfortunately, is that Malawi Broadcasting Corporation has really operated as a mouthpiece of the ruling party. And the only time that you see the Malawi Broadcasting Corporation covering any aspects of the opposition is when it is being disparaging of the opposition. So the coverage is really, really skewed. And we've had instances where national institutions, regulatory institutions, have actually approached the Malawi Broadcasting Corporation to caution them on their conduct, on their broadcasting. Because importantly for us as Human Rights Watch, for example, the credibility of this election will be measured against the standards that are set out in the African Union Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, as well as the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. So under these two instruments, member states are to observe and respect the full participation of citizens in the electoral process. So freedom of expression in the association is very important. Political tolerance is very important. Equal opportunity for all political parties to access state media is paramount. Independence of the judiciary is paramount. So the impartiality of the electoral institutions is very important as well.
Right.
Voter education is very key, but Malawi Broadcasting Corporation has been failing on all these fronts.
Thank you so much. That's all the time we have for now, and we appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much.
Idris Nassa is a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch. They're raising the alarm on what's going to be taking place next week in Malawi, which is the general elections on the 16th of September, as far as confidence in its electoral institutions is concerned. 7:31 Central African Time. Let's get our news headlines. Here's Matapelo Mahape.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. South Sudan's first Vice President, Riek Machar, has been charged with murder, treason and crimes against humanity, sparking concerns about the country's civil war. The charges stem from an attack by a militia linked to Machar. And the South African Police Service, or rather Minister, revealed that despite a slight increase in personnel over the past 3 years, the South African Police Service SAPS staffing is still far from achieving optimal levels. And the UN Security Council has condemned Tuesday's airstrike on the Qatari capital Doha, though it did not name Israel as the perpetrator. More on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
It's time for your sports. Let's find out what's happening as we say good morning once again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Well, the countdown is indeed over. The World Athletics Championships get underway this weekend in Tokyo, Japan. Team South Africa has fielded a strong squad of 49 athletes, making them the second largest side behind Kenya with 58 athletes. Ethiopia follows with 37 athletes. Uganda has 21, while Botswana as well as Zimbabwe has sent a team of 12 and 8 respectively. Our UK-based correspondent Gesho Myati found this report.
Over 2,000 athletes from 200 countries will battle it out across 49 track and field events over the next 9 days in Tokyo, a true festival of speed, strength and endurance. African teams, particularly from the East, Ethiopia, Kenya and Uganda, are once again expected to dominate the distance races and marathons for both men and women. But there is growing confidence from the South as well. Team South Africa team leader Jean Vester says the team is ready to compete and confident of strong performances.
On to football news now. Today marks 100 days to the start of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco. So Morocco is hosting the event for a second time and the first since 1988. Due to FIFA expanding its FIFA Club World Cup competition to 32 teams and having it scheduled for June and July of this year, this edition of the tournament, the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, will be played between the 21st of December 2025 and the 18th of January 2026. It is also the first time that the tournament will be played over the Christmas as well as the New Year period. The situation has been further complicated by the addition of 2 extra match days scheduled for the last 2 weeks of January in the expanded Champions League that begins the season in Europe. Well, Madrid will host the 2027 Men's Champions League final, with Warsaw to stage the women's final. Atletico Madrid's 70,000 capacity Estadio Metropolitano has also been awarded the men's showpiece after Milan's San Siro was stripped of that honour. UEFA decided to reopen bidding for the event amid concerns about refurbishment plans at the San Siro, and the match will now take place in the Spanish capital. Now, Madrid Estadio Metropolitano last hosted the Champions League final back in 2019 when Liverpool defeated Tottenham Hotspur. The women's final will be staged in Poland's capital city at Warsaw's Stadion Narodowy. Now, UEFA also announced that the Super Cup match in 2026 will take place in Salzburg. That's, of course, in Austria. On to some rugby news now. South Africa's Springbok women head coach Swayze de Bruin has named Nolusundi Soboy at lock for Saturday's landmark Rugby World Cup quarter-final against New Zealand in Exeter, one of the 10 changes to the starting 15 that faced France last weekend. The veteran captain returns alongside key starters in Lindelwa Gwala, Daniel Lochner, Sizopila Solonzi, Libby Janse van Rensburg, Zindle Mpupa, as well as Ayanda Malinga, rested last week to preserve fresh legs for the biggest match in the Bok women history. In a bold tactical move, De Bruin has opted for a 7-1 bench split with 7 forwards as well as Eloise Webb as the sole backline cover. Now, the bomb squad includes Log Vina Ubisi as well as Anati Kolo, as well as South Africa preparing to rotate 2 full-backs against the 6-time world champions, hoping, of course, for the biggest upset at this year's Women's Rugby World Cup in defeating, should I say, the current world champions. And finally, former Premier League referee David Coote has pleaded not guilty to a charge of making an indecent image of a child. The 43-year-old was charged on the 12th of August following an investigation by the Nottingham police. The force said the allegation related to a video file recovered by officers in February of this year. So ex-official Coote of Woodhill Road in Collingham in North Hampshire appeared at the Nottingham Magistrates Court yesterday. He spoke only to confirm his name, the date of birth, and enter his plea during an 18-minute hearing. Well, that concludes the sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update for Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Let's check in now with the world of business as we say good morning again to Chandugo Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. South African Minister of Agriculture John Steenhuisen says the country has placed hunger and affordability at the center of its agenda as the G20 Leaders Summit approaches. Steenhuisen says the goal is to deliver a practical program that will help South Africa's economy grow by trading more in agricultural products. Steenhuisen was speaking in Cape Town at the FNB roundtable discussion on the expectations of the agricultural sector from the upcoming G20 meeting.
Our key message to the more developed countries is we're less interested in aid, but we're very interested in trade. And leveling the playing fields is not just about charity. It's about ensuring that our farmers compete on fair terms, that markets remain open and don't get shut for false or inaccurate or selfish purposes.
The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition in South Africa, Park Stau, has announced the withdrawal of draft credit regulations. The proposed regulation, which would have allowed educational institutions to submit student debt information to credit bureaus, has been met with strong public opposition. Minister Tau's decision follows an overwhelming public response, including more than 20,000 submissions, with a vast majority of the responses opposing the regulations. Tsepomongwai reports.
The draft amendments published in the Government Gazette in August triggered widespread fear that student debt could negatively affect graduates' ability to access credit. Minister Tau has committed to a revised process with focus on protecting students while also working to improve access to finance for micro, small and medium enterprises, this to address the existing credit funding gap. Tsepo Mongwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Namibia is set to increase its sulfuric acid production in response to rising critical mineral output, with Green Metals Refining and Vendetta announcing plans to set up and revive plants respectively. Sulfuric acid is widely used in the extraction processes for metals including uranium, copper, manganese and rare earths used in clean energy technologies. Namibia is emerging as a leader in the green energy sector, with 8 active critical minerals projects set to position it at the forefront of global green energy initiatives. In other news, the Nigerian tax bill that seeks to streamline compliance, broaden the tax base and boost revenue is said to have generated widespread anger. Analysts say since the bill's announcement and the removal of subsidies, there had been no measures in place to cushion Nigerians from headwinds. The bill that was signed in June will now take effect until January 2026. Organized labor has given the government an ultimatum to cancel it or face industrial action. Public affairs analyst and media consultant Dr. Adeniyi Ifetayo.
2 years ago, as soon as this current administration came into power, he announced that subsidy is gone and subsidy was gone, and we are still facing the impact, the effect, because there are no measures put in place to cushion the effect of the pains of subsidy removal. So coming out to say in January 2026, you want to remove, you want to add 5% fuel tax consumption, whatever it is untimely.
Consumer prices in the U.S. have increased by the most in 7 months in August amid higher costs for housing and food, but a surge in the first-time applications for jobless benefits last week kept the Federal Reserve on track to cut interest rates next Wednesday. The larger-than-expected rise in the Consumer Price Index reported by the Labour Department yesterday resulted in the biggest year-on-year increase in inflation since January. Higher inflation and softening labour market conditions vent fears of stagflation and pose a dilemma for the U.S. Central Bank beyond Wednesday's anticipated rate decision. Let's have a look at financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 506, Botswana 13 pula 26, Kenya the dollar is 128 shilling 39, Zambia 24 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40, Russia 84 rubles 33, in India 84 rupees 68, China 71.12, South Africa 17 rand 45 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,654, platinum at $1,386 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $65.89 a barrel. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
So today marks 48 years since the death of Steve Bantu Biko, the anti-apartheid activist whose black consciousness movement inspired a generation. This morning, South Africa will reopen the inquest into his death whilst in police custody in 1977, a case that shocked the world and exposed the brutality of the apartheid state. The move forms part of a wider effort to revisit unresolved cases from that era, with fresh inquests also underway in the deaths of Albert Luthuli, Griffith Mxenge, and the Cradock Four. Well, to explore what all this means for justice, accountability, and South Africa's democracy today, we're joined by independent political analyst Sandile Swana. Sandile, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning to you, Peter, and to the listeners of Channel Africa. Thank you so much.
Whilst this is a great development in many respects, when people discuss these inquests, there's one question that keeps coming up quite a bit, is why now, when we've had decades of opportunity to revisit these issues?
Yes, these inquests and calls for trials have been impeded by the ANC government, quite specifically, as part of a deal among the ruling elites, between the ruling elites of the African National Congress and of the National Party, the apartheid government, that they should keep quiet and make sure that the atrocities of the apartheid regime are not exposed and individuals are not persecuted for their apartheid crimes. In return, obviously, the apartheid operatives will also keep quiet about the atrocities of the ANC, because there were atrocities committed by the ANC prior to 1994 against its own people. So when you read, for instance, some of the sworn statements and affidavits of Vusi Pikoli in attempts to reopen these cases, you see that people such as Thabo Mbeki and Bridget Mabandla who was the Minister of Justice at the time in the early part of this democratic government, were directly involved in impeding the NPA, led even by Vusi Pikoli, Advocate Vusi Pikoli, in pursuing these cases. So it's not an accident. There were cases such as this one of Steve Biko, which were clear cases of prosecution, because those people never got amnesty and they should have been prosecuted straight away. However, the ruling elites, specifically under the ANC, actually then impeded that process. The families of the affected individuals have fought for a long time, up until now, to reopen these cases. Of course, some of them are being reopened because the perpetrators have died and are incapacitated or whatever. I mean, 1977 is 48 years ago, as you correctly point out. So the ANC has asked these people to escape.
So is it a question of the ANC has been forced its hand, or is it, as you suggest, maybe that because it's such a long time ago, there will be no real consequences now if the truth is found out?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of circumstances. I think it's becoming inevitable. The ANC is losing its grip on power. And there are different ANC factions. Ramaphosa may have his own atrocities and whatever else, but certainly those military type atrocities may not be as applicable to the UDF, although we must remember that when Steve Biko, the Cradock Four was killed, which is another related case to this one, the apartheid regime announced that the suspect number one of killing the Cradock Four was Azapo. And then that unleashed the UDF against Azapo members who were actually murdered across Uitenhage and Port Elizabeth, that whole area there around PE. So the UDF and the ANC have got their own atrocities around this issue. However, their monopoly on power is reduced, and the persistence of the families the Steve Biko family, the Fort Galata, and so on and so forth, the Craddock Four, and many others, is starting to pay off to produce the desired results.
The Steve Biko story, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what happened. Is the issue more about assigning blame and getting specific people brought to account?
The Steve Biko issue and all these other issues, there are many that are not even mentioned yet. Wellington Chasbane and many others are not even mentioned so far. The Steve Biko issue, as a student of African politics and African political history, you will know that even from 1960 until now, even in the SADC region, there are people who are suffering either from political related torture by the state. In South Africa, we may even be leading in SADC in terms of political killings. The killing of Steve Biko, I'm talking about today, as we speak today, there are political killings. Steve Biko was one of those political killings amongst many. So the struggle against apartheid was also against a struggle against political killings, especially those political killings that are sponsored by the state or by people who are in power, politicians who hold office, and police, which is currently happening. So that's one element where these cases become relevant, to say nobody should involve themselves in political murder, where people are killed for their political views. Or because they are political activists and so on and so forth. Number two, the state itself needs to compensate those families financially and otherwise for reparations, pay reparations for the damage done to those families through those matters. Because Steve Biko was a family man, and Meso was Fort Galata, Mhlauli, and others. So compensation needs to be paid so that the state does not allow or facilitate or even execute political matters without consequences to the state itself.
I mean, there's so many layers to this, and I think you sort of partially explained this recent establishment of a judicial commission to examine whether past ANC governments interfered with investigations of apartheid-era crimes. And I guess this is what you've been relating to, that we're having an actual commission to look into this is quite significant.
It is quite significant, and already even before the commission has met, on the internet you can get especially the testimony by Advocate Bikoli. Fortunately, is a trained advocate and experienced prosecutor in his own right. So the testimony and affidavit that he has written is of a very high quality. It leaves no doubt that the African National Congress leaders, the leaders of the National Party, had no intention of ever coming out clean among themselves and to the South African public for being fully accountable. You know, in the early 90s, I worked for the New York Times, in the Johannesburg bureau of the New York Times. And Joe Sranamane, who later became chairman of the DA, came to my office to say, Sandile, is there anything you can do to find my brother went into exile with the ANC? And the ANC is unable to answer about the whereabouts of my little brother who went to join them in exile. And there are many families where, and Tokyo has said this in public, where comrades would be grabbed and shot in the back of the head, assassination style. So both the ANC and the National Party committed unspeakable atrocities against South Africans, against our own people. And they've covered up for the past 31 years instead of coming out into the open and admitting their shortcomings. Those shortcomings and that cover up has birthed the political killings and the general criminality of the state, the mafia state that we have now in South Africa.
What is making it easy for President Ramaphosa to allow these processes to happen The commission he has control over, but I guess these legal processes, the ANC which he leads is allowing for it to happen finally. What's changed?
I think that you must remember that this commission that you are talking about now is actually a diversion, because they were pressed with actual court processes where judgments could be issued that would go against them. So this commission that Ramaphosa has actually issued, just like the one that he has created with Madlanga, in essence becomes some form of conciliation process that could divert attention from actual criminal liability to some form of settlement of some kind, whether it's financial settlement, some much more milder consequences, because they were hard pressed with the court cases and with top quality witnesses against them. So we must not think that this commission came about because of the kindness or the honesty and truthfulness of Ramaphosa. It was through the hammer blows that were being delivered by the families of the deceased, of the unfairly murdered political activists. It was like that, just the same way that Zuma authorized the Zondo Commission, not because he was kind, no, it was because all legal options were now closed to him. He could have even been arrested for contempt and other things even much earlier than he actually did later on.
I mean, as you speak, I'm hearing in my head that this could be beyond embarrassing if, particularly, there are people still quite senior within the ANC that are alive today that could be implicated in this.
No, there's no question. In fact, the first one implicated in this is Thabo Mbeki himself. If you read the affidavit of Vusi Pikoli, and you'll remember that Pikoli won in 1 year the World Prosecutor of the Year award. So, the quality of the witnesses and the records that are aligned against some of these elites, and especially Bridget Mabandla and Thabo Mbeki, and they are not necessarily being implicated in killing specific people, but in the cover-up and in the ability to obstruct. As we can see now, the allegations by Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi are being diverted in this direction and that direction, in the same way that there was a big struggle to arrest and incarcerate Jackie Silebi and so on and so forth. So the culture of cover-up in terms of the ruling elites of this past, let's say starting in 1990, probably 35 years, it's exactly that we're facing, and they need to come out into the open, all of them. I'm just mentioning two names, but there are many more in the National Party, some probably in the DA by now, some because the National Party went in that direction, some still in the ANC, etc., etc.
Sandile, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Your analysis and insights always greatly appreciated. Thanks for your time.
You're most welcome, sir.
That's independent political analyst Sandile Swana, as an inquest into the death of Steve Biko gets open today. It's 8 o'clock Central African time, which means it's the last hour of the program on a Friday. I'm Peter Ndoro, and you're listening to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective.
My name is Asanda Beda, and good morning, and thanks for joining us. In this hour, we go to Malawi, who are heading to the polls next week, Tuesday, to vote, and we'll be speaking to 41-year-old son of former President Bakili Muluzi, who is Atupele Muluzi, who is once again throwing his hat into the ring. And we'll find out about his UDF party, their manifesto, what they stand for, and his general views on those upcoming elections. First, let's get our our news, though. Here's Matapelo Mahape with that, and then Musibudi Makura will follow with sports headlines.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda, and good morning. South Sudan's first vice president, Riek Machar, has been charged with murder, treason and crimes against humanity in a move that some fear could reignite the country's civil war. Justice Minister Joseph King Akech says that the charges against Machar related to an attack in a march by a militia allegedly linked to the vice president. Forces loyal to Machar fought a 5-year civil war against those backing President Salva Kiir until a 2018 peace deal ending the fighting in the world's newest country. The 2018 peace deal ended the conflict that had killed nearly 400,000 people. And a senior humanitarian aid official, David Miliband, has warned that 2 out of every 3 Sudanese nationals are now in need of aid. Nearly 2.5 years of fighting between the army and the paramilitary group Rapid Support Forces has created the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Miliband, who heads the International Rescue Committee, was speaking to the BBC from Sudan.
There's a great fear that civilians are paying the price for brutality and that the measures that are meant to defend them have not been strong enough. There's a real fear that the conflict is becoming more complex and is aggregating more players, that pushes any kind of thought of a peace settlement further and further away.
And despite a modest increase in personnel numbers in the South African police service over the past 3 years, SAPS staffing remains far from achieving optimum levels. This was revealed in a written parliamentary reply by Police Minister Firoz Kachaila. The reply also reveals that a prolonged period of declining personnel numbers has negatively impacted all businesses units in the SAPS, including the Forensic Science Laboratory. SAPS currently has 4 laboratories across the country, of which 3 are fully operational, 1 in Gauteng, 1 in the Western Cape and 1 in the Eastern Cape province. The KwaZulu-Natal province lab is only partially utilized. The minister says the cases registered for analysis with the Forensic Science Laboratory increased by over 118,000 from 2023 to 2025. And a new initiative has been launched that aims to help parents and guardians in South Africa to navigate the real-life challenges of raising teenagers in a tech-savvy world. Many parents find themselves at a crossroad of how to parent in a digital age. The initiative has been developed by Swastika Jugannath, a business and a life coach. She says the modules within the program include single parenting, disrespect and defiance, managing anger, sex education and sibling rivalry, amongst others.
Our parents and the generation of parenting in their time versus ours, very different. And likewise, if you look at our childhood back then versus our kids' childhood right now, we can't compare them equally. They're very different. So there's a gap of knowledge. And that's what my program has put together. It's basically helping you to relearn how to parent. And I'm definitely an advocate for taking knowledge and insights from the previous generation, but adapting that and making it more applicable and relevant and practical for the challenges that we have now.
And the UN Security Council has condemned Tuesday's airstrike on the Qatari capital Doha, though it did not name Israel as the perpetrator. Council members, including the United States, issued a statement which stressed the de-escalation and respect for Qatari sovereignty. Rosemary DiCarlo is the UN Under-Secretary General.
It was an alarming escalation, especially since it targeted individuals who were reportedly gathered to discuss the latest U.S. proposal for a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza. The Israeli attack on Doha potentially opens a new and perilous chapter in this devastating conflict, seriously threatening regional peace and stability.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, the World Championships are a day away out in Tokyo, Japan, while Greg Norman steps down as a Live Golf CEO. We'll tell you more details at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa. Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126. And we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So yeah, that's who I am, you know.
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views. Share your opinion. Engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African Perspective. This September, Channel Africa celebrates Heritage Month. A time to honor the stories, the rhythms, and the languages that make us who we are. Whether you're in Lagos or the shores of Zanzibar, to the mountains of Lesotho or the markets of Dakar, we are united in diversity.
Najivunia kuwa Mwafrika.
Kupondolera Africa.
Proudly African and fabulous.
Let us preserve our languages. Let's embrace our uniqueness. Let's embrace our cultures and celebrate the beauty of our continent. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Dar es Salaam siku ya leo ni ya kijani.
Ya kabisa, Tanzania nzima macho ni hapa, na mkutano wa leo umeshika karibu 90% ya vyombo vyote vya habari. Niko hapa kusubiri kusikia ni kitu gani hasa ambacho CCM itakisema katika siku ya kwanza ya grand opening ya uzinduzi wa kampeni zake kitaifa.
Rais wa Tanzania Samia Suluhu Hassan ameidhinishwa kuwania kiti cha urais katika uchaguzi utakaofanyika Oktoba 29 mwaka huu na tume ya uchaguzi. Hili unalizungumzia vipi?
Ila kwanza lilitarajiwa, ni jambo liko wazi kwa sababu Rais Samia ndiye aliyepata idhini ya kuteuliwa na Chama cha Mapinduzi kupeperusha bendera ya chama.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
As we continue with our coverage of conversations building up to the Malawi September 16 elections, we are going to get into conversation in terms of getting to know the United Democratic Front, or the UDF. It's one of Malawi's most prominent political parties. Of course, the country Malawi is a multi-party republic after the country's 1966 constitution was amended in 1993, this to allow for this political system. So leader of that UDF, or United Democratic Front, is Atupele Muluzi, a 41-year-old son of former President Bakili Muluzi. He's once again throwing his hat into the ring. Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera is seeking re-election in this next week's polls, but he's facing stiff competition from no fewer than 16 challengers. So we were going to speak to Atupele Muluzi, but we can't get a hold of him, and we'll be talking to Malawi-based political analyst instead, Francis Perry. Francis, let's welcome you to Rise and Shine. How are you on this Friday morning?
How is South Africa? How is the channel?
Francis, your line is quite bad there. Can you hear me? Don't know if you got cut. Can you hear
Hello?
me? All right, I can
you hear me
you
clearly?
Yes, we're doing great at Channel Africa. We're doing great here in South Africa, in Johannesburg. Thank you very much for making time for us. President Lazarus Chakwera facing this stiff competition of no fewer than 16 challenges. First of all, what do you make of that particular picture?
Truly, in Malawi, now has reached the fever heat. The electoral fever is high. Into a lot of Malawians, according to politicians, according to political parties, this is one of the highly competitive and contesting elections. It's really a very, very big election.
What do you make of also the fact that some familiar faces are re-emerging and some political dynasties will also be part of these elections? And it comes 5 years after the last vote and following the leadership of two former presidents who are also contesting in this year's election. Peter Mutharika will be there, who served from 2014 to 2020. Dr. Joyce Banda will be there, Malawi's first female president who held office between 2012 and 2014.
Truly, we have seen bouncing backs of the old faces. We are talking of the former president, Arthur Peter Mutharika, professor of the DPP, the strongest opposition party in Malawi. We have also seen the bouncing back of Joyce Banda, the former president, female president, so to speak, for Malawi. We have also seen the son of the former president, Tupele Muluzi, coming in. So it's really a highest competitive elections.
Let's talk a bit about Tupele Muluzi, the 41-year-old son of former President Bakili Muluzi, and under his United Democratic Front, or UDF, their manifesto has the promise of putting money in people's pockets. How do you think they intend on doing this? As far as you've seen their manifesto, is it a concrete and credible one?
Truly, he is 41 years old, bouncing back, trying to bounce back or take back the position that is retired Malawi to the multi-party democracy. But his manifesto is really much of a promise. When you are aware Malawi is a youth majority, so he's trying to win a lot of majority who are struggling for ends meet, who are struggling to get something to their pocket. So he's taking that desperation, thinking of to manage such a promise.
The line is bad, Francis. We're going to try and get a hold of you again and see if maybe that will be a bit different. We are in conversation with Malawi-based political analyst Francis Perry as part of our build-up to Malawi's elections. They're taking place on Tuesday next week, and we get more coverage in terms of what analysis is there on the elections, looking back as well as looking forward.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimagazo Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could and now you want to put me on the spot.
Do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation.
Right, it's 8:15 Central Africa time, and today is a significant day in history. As we were discussing a little bit earlier on, in South Africa, anti-apartheid activist Steve Biko died whilst he was in police custody, and his death caused severe head injuries, ignited international condemnation, and became a powerful symbol of the brutal nature of the apartheid regime. In 1974, on this day, Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia was deposed in a military coup by the Derg, a committee of military officers, and this event ended a reign of 58 years for the last emperor of Ethiopia and marked a significant shift towards a socialist government. And across the globe, internationally, US President John Fitzgerald Kennedy gave his famous "We Choose to Go to the Moon" speech at Rice University in Houston, Texas, articulating the ambitious goal of landing a man on the moon by the end of the decade. And he said this in 1962. And of course, as Asanda will remember, because she was a good student at school, 1969, eventually man landed on the moon.
Well, and we continue then. Thank you very much for that, ladies. We missed them. Every time you're not here, it's, we miss them. But as we continue with our coverage of Malawi, let's take a look at this, and we'll be talking to that political analyst we were speaking to earlier, Francis Piri, again in just a bit. Let's take a look at this, though. As the days to Malawi's elections draw nearer, Malawians living in South Africa have shared their frustrations over what they see as unkept promises and deepening hardship at home. Some have questioned the ability of current and past leaders to deliver on pledges, particularly around creating jobs for youth and ensuring food security. Another point of contention is the issue of inclusion, as legal and procedural barriers mean they remain excluded from voting abroad, something many view as denying them their basic human rights. So that's a word from South Africans, Malawians based in South Africa. But let's go back now to Francis Piri. Francis, I understand your line is much better. There were network issues there. And are you there, Francis? All right, so let's leave Francis Piri for now, that political analyst we were speaking to earlier. And I'm told by our producers that we actually do have the UDF, or United Democratic Front leader, Atupele Muluzi, on the line. Atupele, thank you for joining us. We were trying to get a hold of you earlier. I see now we've got the favor of having you. How are you?
No, very well.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, great. Let's talk your United Democratic Front. This party stands for, and is one of the prominent in Malawi politically, it stands for moving Malawi from donor dependency to a self-reliant economy. What are the pillars that you have put in place for the realization of this vision?
Investments in
Atupele, we're struggling to hear you a bit there. Can you please just say that again? I don't know if you can shift a little bit from where you're standing. And we do understand that you're in the rural parts of Malawi, so network is an issue, but we can't hear you.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that sounds a bit better.
Yes. There's a geopolitical shift away from aid towards investments and trade. And Malawi at the moment is facing severe economic crisis. Inflation is over 30%, and this is crippling families and businesses. We also have the poverty has decreased from around 50% 5 years ago, and 80% of people now projected to be in severe poverty. And we also have very serious problems on rising unemployment, especially among the youth and the women. And we have a foreign exchange crisis, and this is also causing a crisis, and this is very much hurting families. And Malawi is in a very difficult economic, going through a very difficult economic phase.
Let's talk about that youth development plan of yours, starting with your vision to work on bursary systems for tertiary education. You have an educational background in economics and law from the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom, as well as the College of Law in London. Given that before the 1970s, a majority of Malawian lawyers were trained in the UK, why do you think, though, that it was important that after this time period, a shift would happen where a majority of lawyers in the country are products of the law school at Chancellor College at the University of Malawi?
I think we are training a number of specialists, especially in law, in the legal profession, in terms of human capacity. But I think the focus for now is fixing the economy, trying to get the economy back on track, because we are facing a very severe economic, as I've explained. We have been a country that's been donor-dependent since independence, and traditional donor funding is expected to decline by 50% this year. And this has had a massive impact on all services. And this, Malawians need to really think about this. And as leaders, we are focusing our attention in terms of how we can transition our economy away from donor dependency, but more focus on investment and trade. And what that entails is the rule of law, of course, is extremely important, making sure that we have a rule of law, stability, but also most importantly, creating an environment that is conducive for foreign direct investment. And that includes fixing the exchange rate, making sure that we're decisively dealing with the issue of corruption, because corruption has been a problem, and providing the necessary leadership and drive to begin to transition Malawi toward the opportunities that Malawi has. And that is a very important phase of a generational cycle of critical minerals, where Malawi is sitting on one of the largest strategic minerals in the world. So it's a huge opportunity for the country. Also opportunities in agriculture and tourism and energy as well.
Let's talk about agriculture then, because it is one of the core of Malawi's economic development. 80% of the population is employed by this sector. What does this industry offer as opportunities in the country? Your manifesto gives 15% priority allocation to the sector, coming after education coming after infrastructure development. It's number 3 on your list.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I mentioned that we want to open our economy for business and trade. And also the same way as well, drive. Moving forward, we want to move away from subsistence farming to commercial farming. And I think Malawi has opportunity to grow high-value crops, that, for example, macadamia, cashew, for exports. And, of course, making sure that we adapt our economy with the effects of climate change, support mechanization, and modern farming techniques. But Malawi has to
Thank you so much for your time. I think that's where we're going to leave it at Tupele. We tried to get as much out of you as we possibly could. The lines were not really on our side, network being an issue, but we get the gist of your manifesto and what you stand for. So thank you once again for your time and chatting to us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Atupele Muluzi is leader of the United Democratic Front, or UDF. They are contesting Malawi's elections next week, Tuesday. Just catching us up in terms of what we can expect from that party, the UDF. And now, as we were talking about voices of Malawians living in South Africa, let's go to that report by Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe, who was in the streets talking to some Malawians ahead of Tuesday's elections. They have shared their frustrations over what they see as unkept promises and deepening hardships back home, and some have questioned the ability of current and past leaders to deliver on pledges.
Malawians will head to the polls on Tuesday, 16 September, for the country's tripartite general elections to elect a president, 229 members of parliament, and 509 local government councillors. According to Malawi Electoral Commission, over 7 million Malawians have registered to vote, with women making up 57.1% of the electorate, while in Johannesburg expectations have mixed feelings. Channel Africa spoke with Malawians in South Africa to get their views on the elections. Here are personal views from Afeke Sukali Mviza.
My view, personally, it's something that is very hard to say regarding on the outcome, because looking back into the previous elections, the tripartite elections, we had hope in the new leadership. Remember, they've been promising Malawians about 1 million jobs to the youth, and then promising Malawians regarding food. But now, 4 years into their leadership, we've seen people dying of hunger in Machinga, in Balaka, because there's no food. People are going to the bushes looking for, something to eat, whereby they are just consuming poisonous food and people are dying.
Mvisa says the current government has failed, therefore it's time for the youth to take over.
These elections, I don't know how to put it, because we are looking into a leadership, the government that has failed Malawians. And now we are looking into also DPP with Professor Mutharika, someone about 80-something years old. Where are the youth? Where are the youth? When we are just letting this, Professor Peter Mutharika was a president before, but he failed Malawians again. This is why Malawians were fighting. Remember, there was a fight into this tripartite election. There was a huge fight because he was failing Malawians. There was hunger under his leadership, and now he's bouncing back to leadership. Are we going to give him back leadership, the person who failed us before? Are we going to trust MCP again, the MCP that has just failed us before?
Malawi's electoral law does not allow for diaspora voting, a concern to Mvisa, who is calling for the introduction of diaspora voting.
I think it's high time Malawi government have to introduce maybe online voting for some of us. We also need our voice to be heard. We also need a change. I think this is something, I don't know how many countries are doing it in Africa. Maybe we can be the pioneers of this in Africa. We need people to vote online, especially those that are in UK, in America, in Asia, and here in South Africa.
Another concerned Malawian citizen in South African diaspora, Maxwell Mpotazingwe, says Malawi has lost its direction.
The condition that our country is in, it is so painful because it is hopeless. The country doesn't seem to be going towards any better direction. Look, when we talk about the late 50s, 1950s, the Malawian, our forefathers fought for change. And our then enemy, we used to think was the white man, and yet our enemy is nothing to do with that.
Mpotazingwe added that what they voted for has never been realized, therefore he is calling for change.
When we voted into democracy, we thought there would be change, and nothing has been close to change. We are still the same country, we are still the same people, living under the same ideologies. Even our leaders, I can tell you, they are not giving the country what it's supposed to be getting at the moment. So my thoughts for the country are painful. I need nothing but change for the country.
Similar to Mvisa, Mpotazingwe echoes that not being able to vote in the diaspora has infringed his rights.
I think maybe if there were people who would speak firmly against this unfairness, I am the voice to take this message right to the head of state and to whosoever is in government and going down to the borders of the country. I, and together with the rest of the people that left the country looking for greener pastures, we didn't denounce our nationality. We didn't denounce our citizenry. Pity others are in, dual citizenship. But those who are in countries within the SADC region, most of us are still having our single citizenship, meaning we are the true citizens of the country called Malawi. And thereby we ought to be treated as fairly as possible, just like any other citizen. And the right to vote is within the conduits, within the parameters of my rights. So I think like my rights are being infringed by the very same government that should have been protecting my rights and the rights of whosoever was supposed to be the right citizen of the country.
The fired-up Mpotezingo is hopeless for Malawi's future with the current leadership at the helm.
I see nothing better, my brother. Before you even continue, I see nothing better. If we are to recycle the very same old politicians that have been in the system since 1994 or way back around 1970s, 80s, we are still having the same people driving and steering the country towards their very own pockets, then there's no hope for Malawi.
Another concerned citizen speaking in a webinar from Malawi organized by the Center for Human Rights on Wednesday, Elsie Muntali raised an administration concern.
As a voter, what was my experience? I went to register and I fortunately was a previous registered voter, so I did not face a lot of challenges. But while there, I saw a number of people who go back without registering because they didn't have national IDs. And the national ID protocol became quite challenging until a point where a lot of voters that I meet, especially here in the southern region where I reside, are not registered voters. And that concerns me because now they are so excited to participate in elections, but because they were not given a second or a third or a option to register or to register as a voter, they are now on the sideline.
Human rights organizations have also flagged the readiness of these elections. Idris Asa is a senior researcher at Human Rights Watch.
Going into this election, there are very serious concerns about the preparedness of Malawi to hold an election that will, live up to the standards of free, fair, and credible elections, that will live up to, the AU standards, the SADC, standards on governing democratic elections. So is Malawi ready at this very moment to not only live up to its own domestic, dictates on holding free, fair, and credible elections, but also regional standards and continental and international standards? I think that's the question we have to answer.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Let's say good morning to Matapelo Mahape now. She's got our news headlines. It's 8:32 Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Stories making headlines as Zambia's government plans to seek additional compensation for communities affected by a toxic spill from a Chinese-owned copper mine following a full assessment. The spill polluted a key river, causing health risks and warnings from embassies. And South Sudan's first Vice President, Riek Machar, has been charged with murder, treason and crimes against humanity. The charges stem from an attack in March by a militia linked to Machar. The 5-year civil war ended in 2018 with a peace deal ending the conflict that killed nearly 400,000 people. And Qatar's Prime Minister will meet top U.S. officials today at the White House to discuss an Israeli attack in Qatar and the status of talks for a ceasefire in Gaza. More details on these and other stories at top of the hour.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, it's time for your sport, and to take us into the weekend, here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning once again from the sports desk. Now, the South African Football Association President, Dr. Danny Jordan, is not giving up on having Bafana Bafana and Orlando Pirates defender Mbekezeli Mbokazi in the Amajita squad for the FIFA Under-20 World Cup later on this month. Now, Jordan revealed that he will soon be meeting Orlando Pirates as he tries to reach an agreement with them for Mbokazi's availability. So, with the tournament in Chile falling outside of the FIFA calendar, clubs are not obliged to release players, but Jordan is hoping that Pirates will agree to release Mbokazi.
Yes, because we have never had such an excellent defender at that age. And the opportunity that playing in the World Cup Under-20, you have the whole world watching Under-20. And at that age, they're looking for the injection of new talent in their teams. And this is an excellent opportunity, so I hope we can find an understanding on the matter. And of course, he belongs to Orlando Pirates.
Right, so something to look forward to this weekend is the World Athletics Championships getting underway this weekend in Tokyo, Japan. Team South Africa has fielded a strong squad of 49 athletes, making them the second largest side behind Kenya with 58. Ethiopia follows with 37. Uganda has 21, while Botswana as well as Zimbabwe sent 12 and 8 athletes respectively. Our UK-based correspondent Geshem Yati found this report.
Over 2,000 athletes from 200 countries will battle it out across 49 track and field events over the next 9 days in Tokyo, a true festival of speed, strength and endurance. African teams, particularly from the East, Ethiopia, Kenya and Uganda, are once again expected to dominate the distance races and marathons for both men and women. But there is growing confidence from the South as well. Team South Africa team leader John Vester says the team is ready to compete and confident of strong performances.
On to rugby news now, South Africa's Springbok women head coach Swayze de Bruin has named Nolusindi Soboy at lock for Saturday's landmark Rugby World Cup quarter-final against New Zealand in Exeter, one of the 10 changes to the starting 15 that faced France last weekend. So the veteran captain returns alongside key starters such as Lindelwa Gwala, Daniel Lochner, Sozi Pila Solonzi, Libby Jansa van Rensburg, Zintle Mpupa as well as Ayanda Malinga, all rested last week to preserve fresh legs for the biggest match in the Bok women history. So in a bold tactical move, De Bruin has also opted for a 7-1 bench split with about 7 forwards as well as Eloise Webb as the sole backline cover. The bomb squad includes Logs Vina Obisi as well as Anati Qolo as South Africa prepares to rotate 2 full-backs against the 6-time world champions. On to golf news now. Greg Norman, the founding CEO of Live Golf, has officially stepped away from the Saudi-backed tour, marking the end of a 4-year chapter that reshaped the global golf landscape. So known as the Shark, the 2-time major winner was instrumental in recruiting top talent from the PGA as well as the European circuits, with a when Live Golf was launched back in 2021. Norman was replaced by Scott O'Neill in January but remained with the league in an unnamed role until his contract expired in August. Now part of the organising board for the 2032 Brisbane Olympics, Norman exits as Live completes its 4th season, while also merger talks with the PGA Tour remain stalled following a rejected $1.5 billion offer in April of this year. And finally, former Premier League referee David Coote has pleaded not guilty to a charge of making an indecent image of a child. The 43-year-old was charged on the 12th of August following an investigation by Nottinghamshire police. The force said the allegation related to a video file recovered by officers in February of this year. So ex-official Coote of Woodhill Road in Collingham in Nottinghamshire appeared at Nottingham Magistrates Court yesterday. He spoke only to confirm his name, date of birth and enter his plea during the 18-minute hearing. Well, that concludes the sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the On the Move team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
And now let's say good morning for the final time on Rise and Shine on this Friday, the 12th of September. When it comes to the world of business, here's Chandugo Ligege with the details.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. India has agreed to provide about $680 million in economic assistance to Mauritius for healthcare, infrastructure and maritime security projects. This comes as New Delhi pushes for greater influence in the Indian Ocean nation in competition with China. Joey Lihodi has more details.
The assistance in the form of grants and lines of credit also includes support for development and surveillance of the marine protected area of the Chagos archipelago. The marine protected area where commercial fishing is banned is one of the world's largest, covering 250,000 square miles. The economic assistance was announced in a joint statement during the state visit of Mauritian Prime Minister Navichandra Ramgoolam to India.
South African Minister of Agriculture John Steenhuisen says the country has placed hunger and affordability at the center of its agenda as the G20 Leaders Summit approaches. Steenhuisen says the goal is to deliver practical programs that will help South Africa's economy grow by trading more in agricultural products. Steenhuisen was speaking in Cape Town at the FNB roundtable discussion on the expectations of the agricultural sector from the upcoming G20 meeting.
Our key message to the more developed countries is we're less interested in aid, but we're very interested in trade. And leveling the playing fields is not just about charity. It's about ensuring that our farmers compete on fair terms, that markets remain open and don't get shut for false or inaccurate or selfish purposes.
The Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition in South Africa, Pakstau, has announced the withdrawal of draft credit regulations. The proposed regulation, which would have allowed educational institutions to submit student debt information to credit bureaus, has been met with strong public opposition. Minister Dau's decision follows an overwhelming public response, including more than 20,000 submissions, with a vast majority of the responses opposing the regulations. Tsepa Mungwai reports.
The draft amendments published in the Government Gazette in August triggered widespread fear that student debt could negatively affect graduates' ability to access credit. Minister Dau has committed to a revised process with focus on protecting students while also working to improve access to finance for micro, small and medium enterprises, this to address the existing credit funding gap. Tsepa Mongwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, a South African political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, says the government's decision to withdraw the draft credit regulations on student debt listing with credit bureaus was prompted by strong opposition from the party. EFF MP Sihle Lonzi.
Instead of coming up with progressive policies to say how do we grow our economy, how do we create jobs for young people, we opt to say let us blacklist students, majority of whom are already unemployed, majority of whom already don't have their degrees and certificates because they owe institutions of higher learning money. So of course we pushed back against it.
And U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent plans to meet with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and other senior officials next week in Madrid to continue their discussions on trade, economic and national security issues. The meeting, which will also cover the status of the Chinese-owned social media platform TikTok and joint efforts to combat money laundering, are part of Bessent's visit to Spain and Britain. Bessent will also meet with government counterparts in Madrid and London and will later join President Donald Trump for his official visit to Britain's King Charles from the 17th to the 19th of September. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 506. In Botswana, 13 pula 26. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 39. Zambia, 24 kwacha 8. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 40. Russia, 84 rubles 33. India, 84 rupee 68. China, 71.12. South Africa, 17 rand 45 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,654, platinum at $1,386 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $65.89 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Culture Summit Africa 2025 has heard how African organizations are rethinking the role of culture in driving performance. More than 200 leaders and HR professionals gathered in Johannesburg, South Africa, for the first summit of its kind on the continent, focusing exclusively on organizational culture. The summit was designed to be a platform for ongoing dialogue about how organizations build culture that drives performance. Nhlanhla Mahlangu attended the summit and filed this report.
Culture Summit Africa brought together executives, HR leaders and culture practitioners to explore how values, purpose and people create performance. It featured 29 speakers over 2 days with delegates from South Africa, Namibia, Uganda and Mauritius. For African businesses facing rapid change, the summit created a space to share practical lessons and measurable outcomes from companies that are living their culture every day. Adash Grewal, Head of Talent Development and Culture at Constance Hotels and Resorts in Mauritius, says it's important to have leaders who listen.
You're not going to be successful if your people are not together. You're not going to be successful if your people are not living the same values that you preach or living the very DNA of your business. And that happens only through culture. So it's extremely important to get leaders to understand culture, understand the importance of culture. And what I would really like in events like this is to see not just HR people attending, but to see heads of departments and general managers attending, because a leader is not your HR manager. A leader can sit anywhere in the organization, but everybody needs to kind of understand culture and understand the importance of culture.
Laurel Feljune, Head of Culture and Leadership at Capricorn Group in Namibia, says leadership is the most important role in organizational culture.
Everything starts from the top. People look up to leaders. Leaders embody everything. As a leader, you have got control and you are responsible for your whole team. You've got to set the example as a leader. You've got to live out and be an example of what is possible. You cannot say one thing and do another, and your team is continuously looking up to you for guidance. And if you don't live the culture and do things the right way, there's no way it will permeate into your team. They'll just think you're unauthentic, you're not living up to it, and we need leaders to take the forefront in this, because ultimately they are the holder of the people.
Abdul Makubuya, Senior Manager of Organizational Development at National Social Security Fund in Uganda, says ongoing dialogue about how organizations build culture can drive performance.
If you look at the changes within the organization, the multi-generational workforce, culture has become a key aspect if any organization is to move forward. You may have a good strategy, but if you do not have good behaviors, because culture is basically behaviors, you'd still fail. Culture is a living aspect. If you have had culture for the last 20 years, the same culture, the business world is changing. If you don't revisit it to see whether it's still relevant, you may miss out. I earlier said that we have a multi-generational workforce. We have millennials, we have the next generation. They are fast moving, but if the organization is not as fast moving as they expect, then you miss out. So your culture is supposed to be accommodative of the differences within us that make us the best employees we can be.
The summit explored how culture underpins performance, purpose, and transformation. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ndlandla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
And listening to Ndlandla Mahlangu reminds us that every Friday at this time we has a turn with her, actually, as she gives us our weekly update of arts and culture. Here she is once again with African Arty Beats.
Welcome to this week's African RT Beats exclusive to Channel Africa, The African Perspective. I am Ndlandla Mahlangu. In this week's segment, a star-studded lineup set to light up the inaugural I Am Dark and Lovely Festival in Johannesburg, South Africa in November this year. An artist stormed a press conference organized by the Southern African Music Rights Organization, SAMRO. The I Am Dark and Lovely Festival, set to take place on the 8th of November this year in the city of Johannesburg, promises to be more than just a music event celebrating style and culture. The festival will see a star-studded lineup which includes Uncle Waffles, Nasty C, and Young Stunner, amongst others. More from Bongi Manqele, brand business lead for Dark and Lovely.
The I Am Dark and Lovely Festival was really born from the fact that, you know, our consumers that have been with us for so many years, Dark and Lovely is plus 50 years old. And we have realized that in all that we do, we give consumers some great product, you know, phenomenal claims, and whether your hair is relaxed or natural. And we remembered that what happens when you leave the salon? You want to be seen, right? So let's give our people a place to be seen. Let's give them a place and opportunity to be outside and enjoy themselves. We also just wanted to showcase the fact that Dark and Lovely is ever evolving and it's multi-generational, right? So no matter who you are and when you were born, you know, it's able to stay relevant, which is how we decided that, you know, a festival will be one of the best ways to even connect with our now consumer, you know, with our now generation that we have that loves being outside in a festival type of environment. So it was so crucial that something like this be born and make sure you are able to actually shaipat.
So the festival is coming up in November. Yes. What can one expect?
I'm nervous every single time I'm thinking about it, because not nervous, I'm so excited. I'm thinking about it every single time. And what is crucial for us more than anything is that the lineup is massive, right? So the lineup that we chose also perfectly for this festival. We have Lilo What's Good, we have DJ Lag, we have DJ Zintle, we have Major League, we have Morda, we have Casper Nyoves, we have Young Stana, we have Zingumalo, we have Nasty C, Kasba De Small, we have Kamo Pela, and our headliner is Uncle Waffles. I cannot, it's so amazing. So, you know what, and when I count these actual artists, you think that's what it is, it's just another concert. No, it's not. The reason why it's a festival is because there's so much more for you to do there. There's going to be activations where you can get your hair touched up, go get your makeup done, and then you come back and get your skincare taken care of. It's an all-rounder. So it's not just a matter of all of these amazing artists, but the brand wants to celebrate you and all that you are with one of the most important things for yourself, which is hair, makeup, and skin.
We cannot hold a press conference and talk to the country about the matters of the house when we have not spoken to the house. We are shareholders. These guys are disrespecting us. And they are lying to you. They are lying to you.
Chaos erupted at a press conference this week organized by the Southern African Music Rights Organization SAMRO to discuss internal issues. Frustrated musicians stormed into the briefing demanding their unpaid royalties. Among them were legendary musicians Messi Pakela and William Tetwa. They expressed concerns about their long overdue payments that they claim SAMRO owed them. The conference, which was held in Mill Park, Johannesburg, was initially intended to address internal disputes and the recent suspension of Chief Operating Officer Mpho Mofikwe, who faced allegations of disclosing fraudulent activities. More from SAMRO CEO Annabelle Libete.
The purpose of today's engagement is to ensure that you, as the media, our members, and the wider public have clear and accurate information about SAMRO, our work, and our vision for the future. At its core, SAMRO's mandate is simple but powerful: to administer performing rights on behalf of our members. Our responsibility is to ensure that composers, songwriters, and publishers are fairly compensated whenever their music is used commercially, whether on stage or on air, in hospitality venues, or across digital platforms. This is an industry with enormous potential, but also real challenges. From economic pressures to the rapid changes in how music is consumed, integrity, transparency, and good governance are therefore more important to us as the management team and as well as the board. I am proud to share that SAMRO has made significant strides in recent years. And I just want to speak to a few facts to demonstrate these significant strides. In 2024, we reported a record-breaking financial results. License revenues grew by more than 15%, while royalty distributions to our members increased by over 60%, the highest in our history.
That's it from this week's African RT Beats. Until next Friday for Channel Africa, I am Ntlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Coming up after Rise and Shine on this Friday, the 12th of September, is On the Move with Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa Tao. Benjamin joining us, looking bright and
it was that red.
Youthful.
That red had an impact that you were wearing yesterday.
Oh, yesterday I was wearing red, yes. I was a bright one yesterday.
Wearing these colors can be problematic for you because if you're out in the streets, people might think you're an escaped convict.
Oh, the orange. No,
yes. The orange. No,
yeah, that hat. Did you see the hat? The green hat?
Oh, no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, no. It makes sense together as an outfit.
Okay, how are you guys doing though?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Awesome, man. Well, today is a Friday, so it's always fun conversations that happen on the show. I don't know if you guys heard that the South African Revenue Services has announced that they want to actually charge tax to social media influencers. And the influencers are like, no, why us?
Unbelievable.
They're working, most.
Unbelievable.
Guys.
They're also working.
It's already
getting
difficult
paid.
getting paid in that environment.
Mate.
And isn't it
if you
tough?
understand what tax is for,
yeah,
it's not even a question then.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What is tax for? Tax is to build roads.
Yes.
To build schools, hospitals.
Sure.
That's why we pay tax. It isn't a punishment. We actually enjoy the fruits of the tax.
We do?
Yes.
I wish we did.
Do we know what the proposition is? Yeah, we should. Do you know what the proposed percentage is?
I'm not sure. It's probably going to be like us freelancers, I'm sure.
Tax is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, there's a tax table.
Yes.
And the taxman says, how much money did you earn this year?
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the table, and the tax that you pay is there.
Yeah.
So additional income from influencing, from whatever, all it is just to add it all together. How much did I earn? 100 Rand, tax 25%, give over to government, and build schools, build clinics.
I like when he goes there. Build schools, build clinics. Hospitals, right?
It's not confusing. I don't know why people are making an issue of it.
All right, we're going to be chatting about that, what it actually means for the influencers and what the influencers think about it as well. It should be an interesting take on this one.
Yeah.
I think we're still in early stages of this influencer culture, and I think it's done a little bit prematurely. I'm also thinking of why is it just influencers? How come it doesn't go to the podcasters? The digital landscape is huge, so there's so many questions where people are saying, why are you aiming at us? Because there's so many people who influence the environment.
And maybe I'm starting to sound like a South spokesperson.
Yeah, you do.
Like what it is that any income that you earn, you must declare. And all that's happening is that they haven't been declaring. One by one, people with hidden income are going to be found out. That's what's happening.
All right, and we say goodbye then on that note, because we have to get out of here. It's 9 o'clock. Of course, stay tuned for On The Move. And this is Rise and Shine from me, Asanda, Beda.
And me, Peter Ndoro from SARS. Have a good weekend.
Oh, SARS.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Top stories this hour. Zambia demands more compensation for toxic mine spill, and Qatar MP meets US officials. With the news at 9 o'clock, I'm Matapula Mahabe. Good morning. Zambia's government says it will seek more compensation for communities affected by a toxic spill from a Chinese-owned copper mine if this is needed following a full assessment. The spill of highly acidic mine waste laden with toxic heavy metals happened in February when a dam that held waste from the Sino Metals Leach Zambia copper mine collapsed, polluting a key river that is a major